Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. And so I hope that everybody's keeping wherever might be. And I'm just here at a kuti, at the village kuti in Gampaha. And so actually just a few days ago I had this opportunity. I was able to finally get back to the forest after several months of being, or a few months at least anyway, of being kind of incapacitated a little bit with this ankle injury. And I think your body gives you signs. And my body started to feel kind of very uncomfortable sitting down. So well, maybe I better get up and walk and see what I can do. And outside of this kuti is this relatively steep hill, and actually going down these hills can be very difficult, or pretty tricky anyway, with an ankle injury. So I was kind of going along, and things seemed to feel fine. And then at a certain point, the body started feeling much looser, and the injury actually started feeling like it was getting worse. But I was already partway to the forest, so I figured I'll just get to the forest and then rest there. In any event, went and did all these things, and had a nice day in the forest during the day. Came back afterwards, and the following day, the ankle was actually less swollen. It was actually in better shape than it was before. So going along and practicing meditation can be similar sometimes. It's not always so easy to see when one is necessarily on the right road or when one is necessarily on the wrong road. I mean, there's obvious signs when one is breaking the precepts. There's obvious signs when one is cultivating bad thoughts, doing bad actions. But other than that, when one is, say, sincerely trying to go forward in meditation, sometimes it's not always clear whether the pain or the difficulty one is feeling is a result of progressing or a result of regressing. So, I remember when I was a young man, I used to like to play Nintendo. These kind of like Nintendo games that you play. And those days was very different. They had this game genie. They called it a game genie. You would put the Nintendo cartridge into this game genie, and you'd stick it into your Nintendo machine, and then you could manipulate the game in certain ways. It wasn't always the case that the game usually had these set parameters. And you kind of you could if you're playing Super Mario, you could be Mario with like a raccoon tail all the time and never lose that ability if you put in these certain parameters into this game genie. And people figured it out by playing with these codes. So I remember one time I had this game. I think it was Super Mario 3 or something. I don't know what number they're on now. This was in the early 90s. And this game genie, you could get all these different combinations. Mario had all these different powers. You could make him big. You could make him into a raccoon that could fly. You could make him into these different things. And Game Genie had these different passcodes that you could use to generate these abilities so that you wouldn't lose them. Anyways, it had the passcodes for everything except for this one Mario, Frog Mario. Frog Mario, I really wanted to be able to have this ability to become Frog Mario and never lose him. So I remember I just started playing with these codes on my own. It was like a 13-digit code. And then eventually I found this code that one time it would generate Frog Mario, but then he kept on turning into a puff of smoke. He would turn into Frog Mario, I think, and then turn into smoke, and turn into Frog Mario, and turn into smoke. I figured, well, at least I'm on the right track. At least this seems to be going in the right direction. So in any event, I kept playing and I kept refining the code. Eventually you can kind of, as far as I remember, you can find a particular section of the code and you narrow it down. It seems, okay, this particular section, these two letters must be wrong because I've manipulated everything else. And eventually I got it. I think I was like 7 or 8 or 9 or something at the time. It left an impression. It was kind of a memorable lesson that I learned in life, which was basically that there's usually a way to find the solution to the problem that we're looking for. Now, one of the tricky things in meditation is that sometimes the solution that we're looking for is right there in the books. It's right there in the suttas, and we can find it. And you just read the sutta, and then we apply whatever the advice the Buddha gave was. And in these cases, it's excellent. And kind of there's not that much, one doesn't necessarily have to do that much extra work. There's the work of putting into practice what the Buddha taught, but there's not the work of having to try to find it out. There's also cases where we can go to teachers. We can go to friends on the path. They call them kalyanamitas. Kalyanamitas are people who generally give us good advice on how to move forward and whose example we can emulate. Basically, they're a teacher. And sometimes we can go to teachers and we can find the answer to what we're looking for. We just ask them and they tell us. And they've already been through that same process that we're now going through. And so they can tell us the specific answer to the question that we're asking. So these are also excellent cases. But in other cases, there's another type of case where the general answer may be in the suttas. And the teachers may point us to the general answer, but the particular steps that we need to take to get there, we just can't find. It's not so easy, to find the solution. So I remember I was staying in Thailand once with a very respected Ajahn, and I can't remember if it was when we were there or I listened to his talk after, but he had this phrase, there's a solution for everything. And you can imagine the Buddha on the night of his awakening, he had tried everything, every single avenue, every single path, and still couldn't find it up until that point. What keeps a person going in these times is conviction that actually there is a solution. Although nobody else may know the solution exists. And so long as I keep trying, I can get it. There's a way to do it. This requires a bit of faith. It requires faith, number one thing, in the Dhamma, that there is these solutions. There's solutions that can be found. Look what the Buddha found. And look at the difficulties he had. Certainly whatever difficulties I'm facing, there's going to be a solution. And I was also listening to an excellent talk the other day by Ajahn Chins. We kind of have this faith in oneself, this faith that I'm a person who can do this. Now this faith gets bolstered through this quality of endurance, this unwillingness to give up in the face of difficulties. Sometimes you get set back and feel discouraged and not be able to see a way forward, but it's this kind of quality of planting one foot in front of the other and then observing whether or not what it was one did was effective. And kind of, so getting out there to that ledge was very lovely. It was beautiful. Ended up staying there the whole day and wasn't sure whether this was actually something good for my foot or whether my foot was improving, whether my foot was declining. But the following day it seemed like it improved. And unfortunately, could only get this kind of general advice from the doctor. So whatever solution it is that one is searching for in one's meditation practice or in one's practice in general, it's good to have these assumptions. This assumption that there's a solution, that there's a way to do this. Even though I ask all these other people, I look in the suttas, my specific solution isn't there. There's a way that I can find it. And sometimes one finds that the problems that one encounters in one's meditation are connected with things in the suttas, but not directly related. The Buddha might have just touched on it as a topic, or the teachers might have had an experience that was relatable, but not the exact same. And so one couldn't do it. So in these cases, one has to get used to manipulating the code. The code of one's meditation, the code of one's life. And sometimes it's this way, like the way with a frog or Mario, like this experience I had. One manipulates the code a little bit. Oh, And then all of a sudden it's like this Frogger Mario appears, he disappears, he appears, he disappears. One can have this sense, wait a minute, I'm on the right track. One goes for a little walk and one comes back, and then the following day one's foot heals a bit. Oh, wait a minute, I'm on the right track. I don't know if this is going to be the exact solution, but it feels like the direction that I'm going in is right. So, of course, this manipulation comes down to, it becomes a matter of decimal points over time. At first it's like the whole numbers, and then the single digits, and then decimal points. We kind of refine our investigation. We refine our search to try to find the solution that we're looking for, try to find what it is that we're looking for. And this can come down to decimal points. Now, in Thai, they have this word, they have these two words. They have this word po chai dai and this word podi. Po chai dai means good enough to use, basically, and podi means like perfectly right, like perfectly balanced, basically, as far as my limited my limited understanding of Thai. So when we're searching for a solution to the various problems that might face us in meditation, it might be something to do with the physical body. This kind of ankle isn't healing properly. It might be something to do with the meditation topic. When I try to do this, this happens, and why? I can't find a way behind this. And in the beginning stages, one sometimes has to have this attitude of good enough to do. This attitude of going out and testing it out. And there's going to be a mix of these good and bad results. But in the end, as one can narrow one's focus down, one can manipulate the decimal points even. That goes from the whole number, or from the, say from the tens to the single digits to the decimal points. One manipulates these things, and eventually one can find this solution of podi, where everything can fall into place, where the decimal points are just right. Sometimes it strikes one as something really, really obvious. Well, I should have seen this all along. This kind of solution was there staring me in the face. But for various reasons, one couldn't see it. So if one can do this in the small ways, it can lead to doing it in the larger ways. It can give one the confidence that there's a way to overcome these problems. There's a way to solve these issues. And look at what the Buddha did. Look at the issues that he had to overcome. There was no guarantee at that time that there was a solution to the problem of birth, aging, and death. He was the one who found it through his efforts and had to go to the extremes, almost every extreme, to find them. So whatever it is, whatever difficulty one faces in one's meditation practice, always these kind of words of inspiration. We have the examples of the teachers, we have the advice from the suttas, we have the advice from the people who are close to us, our kalyanamitas. Sometimes one just has to have this in mind, that there's a solution to every problem. And so long as one goes forward, manipulating the factors, reducing the decimal points, the Frogger Mario appears and disappears, but the time finally comes when the code is right, when you get it, when he appears and it's stable. And this is something that can give one the confidence to overcome problems and to use these principles further to move forward on the Buddhist path. Okay, so I think leave that for reflection, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice.